Hello folks, and welcome back to Retro Gamer Diaries. Today we're talking about the Liverpool-based game developer Denton Designs. Really wanted to do this after I'd done my Frankie Goes to Hollywood video. Anyway, our story starts on the 9th of July 1984 when Imagine Software's bubble burst and the company employees became redundant overnight. God, they were such a good company. They were right up there with Ocean. However, it wasn't all doom and gloom. From the ashes and confusion rose a phoenix, Denton Designs, a programmers cooperative set up by Steve Cain, Ian Weatherburn, Ali Noble, John Gibson, Karen Davis and Graham Kenny Everett. Actually, his real name's Graham Everett. I think we just call him Kenny Everett after that comedian. And amongst these founders were developers who had worked on the unfinished mega game Bandersnatch, which was an Imagine Software game. Now, Denton was initially specialised in developing software for the ZX Spectrum home computer, but later moved into the Commodore 64, the Amstrad CPC, the Amiga, MS-DOS, Atari ST and the Game Boy. The company produced a number of innovative games, including Shadowfire and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and quickly earned a reputation for original high-quality software. So, in this video I cover the main catalogue of games manufactured by Denton. I think I cover around about 31 titles. And I've also included all the different versions of these titles across all the system formats, so there's quite a few games to look at. So let's get into it and have a look at these games developed by Denton Designs. Yeehaw! Okay, first up is Gift of the Gods, which was released on the ZX Spectrum. This first project pretty much came from the mega game project that the team were working on for Imagine. In Gift of the Gods, you control your character Orestes, who must avenge his father's murder by returning to the Palace of Messenia, entering its catacombs and solving a puzzle. The game is based loosely on a Greek myth attributed to Homer, in which Agamemnon, the father Orestes, is murdered by his wife. In the myth, Orestes, along with his sister Electra, avenge their father's death by killing their mother. Oh, that's not very good, is it? Essentially a maze game. There are 16 rooms, each containing 4 Euclidean shapes, 6 of which are real and must be taken to the Guardian's Chamber, which will then allow Orestes to escape, the remaining 58 being just illusions. Orestes' sister Electra will point him in the direction of the nearest room with a real shape and point at it. Most rooms have 4 illusions, and a single room can contain several real shapes. If Orestes slays one of the large magical monsters found in the maze, the illusions will disappear for a short while, making the choice easier. The mother is also in the maze and will kill Electra if the two meet, making the task all the more difficult to accomplish. Orestes' stamina is sapped by the maze monsters and can be replenished by either entering the Guardian's Chamber, which instantly restores health, or by finding life-giving water that drips from the ceiling, replenishing at a much slower rate. Orestes can walk, run, fly and fight using the same set of controls. If Orestes is near a monster, light mode will be used, whereas if he's near a ledge, he will fly over. The maze is not straightforward. For instance, moving first up then right will take Orestes to a different room than moving first right then up. However, it is mappable as the map logic is consistent. Let's have a little look at the game. Cosmic Wartoad was released in 1985 for the ZX Spectrum. The queen of the Cosmic Wartoads has been kidnapped by the Regalian slime beast, turned into a human, and is being held captive beneath the Slime King sludge saw, which descends over the course of 90 minutes and will kill her if it is not stopped. The player controls the Cosmic Wartoad as he attempts to rescue the queen. To achieve this, he must travel across the Regalian time void, an 8x8 grid of nodes, by entering a node, successfully completing the minigame within, and then entering an adjacent node, all the while collecting the 8 pieces of the Cosmic Toolkit that will shut down this sludge slaw. Each node contains one of several repeating minigames, which typically involve the Cosmic Wartoad fighting enemies. The game finishes either when Cosmic Wartoad successfully collects all 8 pieces of the toolkit and navigates his way across the grid to shut down the saw. The game also ends when the Cosmic Wartoad loses all his 3 lives, obviously. And the game ends when the 90-minute game period expires. So let's make sure we finish it before that time limit, yeah? Okay, weird as it sounds, let's have a little look at the game. Frankie Goes to Hollywood came out in the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64 and the Amstrad CPC. We'll look at all of them, but we'll start with the ZX Spectrum here. The game puts the player in Liverpool in search of the Pleasure Dome. The player has to find and use various objects and play mini-games to reach the goal. The player starts the game as a simple character. To reach the Pleasure Dome, one has to become a full person. And to become a full person, the 4 attributes sex, war, love and faith must be filled to 99%. The attributes are boosted by completing tasks in the game. Additional pleasure points can also be scored by playing these mini games. If you're a big fan of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, you'll notice that the 4 attributes are actually part of the symbols used on the covers of Frankie Goes to Hollywood's albums. During the game, a murder also takes place. All the rooms the player can visit contain clues in order to find the murderer. The clues are in pairs, helping eliminate suspects. For example, the player may be told the killer is an atheist and Mr. Somebody is a regular churchgoer, so Mr. Somebody would be innocent. In theory, the game cannot be completed without making the correct accusation, and that's done by returning to the room with the body. There's also a large bonus of pleasure points for naming the killer. Now there's actually a bit more to this game, and if you're interested, well, I've done a recent video on Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I'll leave a link at the end of this video if you're interested. Okay, let's have a look at the Commodore 64 game. And then finally, here's the Amstrad CPC version of the game. All 3 games are very similar. I would say obviously the Commodore 64 and the Amstrad CPC have got better graphics and better sound compared to the ZX Spectrum, but all 3 games are very similar. Okay, Roland Rats Race for the Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. The player has to guide Roland Rat through the sewers of London and collect 9 pieces of a door which, when completed, would allow him to rescue his companions in time for an appearance on TV-AM. Roland has to avoid enemies in the form of animated Wellington boots, which could be temporarily incapacitated with a squirt of glue, which could also be used to stop tube trains in order to ride on them. Hey, who remembers Roland Rat, eh? Hey, Rat fans! Okay, let's look at the game and then we'll look at the Commodore 64. Okay, now we're on Shadowfire, which was released for the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum. General Zoff, a traitor to the Empire, is holding Ambassador Kryzex captive in his spaceship. Plans for a new type of spaceship, the Shadowfire of the game's title, are contained in the micro-disc hidden in the Ambassador's spine. If Zoff gets the plans, the Empire will be in great danger, and it's only a matter of time until his Inquisitors will discover them. The Emperor has assembled the Enigma Force, a group of 6 operatives who are the cream of the Emperor's legions, the worst of its criminal scum or the latest development in cybermetrics. This player's task is to rescue Kryzex, capture Zoff, and destroy or capture his starship, the Zoff 4. Oh, who wrote this script? George Lucas? Players control all 6 characters and have 1 hour and 40 minutes of real time to rescue Ambassador Kryzex and capture General Zoff. All 6 characters have different abilities. Silik is an insectoid and a strong fighter. Sark Monitor, the team leader, is an expert in unarmed combat and the translator of the group, meaning that Kryzex will only follow Monter. Severina Maris is the only character who can pick locks. Toric is an avian with thorough knowledge of explosives and the fastest moving character. Maul is a slow, powerful combat droid. And finally, there's Mantle. He's a bit of a weak droid, but he's the only team member that can operate the transporter that is vital for the mission's success. There you go, a right odd bunch. Controls are completely icon based and the screen is divided into several sections. The upper screen section is called the Mission Command screen and displays which character is active, the active character's location and the status of all characters, whether they are moving, engaged in combat, weak or dying, or performing certain actions such as picking locks. The lower half of the screen changes depending on the situation and shows additional information on all selectable actions. From the main screen, players can choose 1 of 6 characters and access 4 subscreens. The character status screen shows a character's speed, strength, stamina, that's health, and carried weight. The objects screen shows all objects present at a location, as well as all objects carried by the selected character. It can be used to drop or pick up items, equip weapons and items, or use special items. The movement screen, here the active character can be moved by clicking on arrows that show possible directions for a character to move. And then there's the battle screen. During battles, characters can scan the location to count and identify their enemies, move, attack with or without a weapon, defend or retreat. Alright, let's have a look at the Commodore 64 version of Shadowfire. And here's Shadowfire on the Amstrad CPC. Sorderon's Shadow on the ZX Spectrum is a mixture of a classic text adventure game, an action game and a role-playing game. You, as the unnamed one, shall unite the living and bring about Sorderon's downfall by completing 9 separate tasks in order. In the strange land of Elendor, the evil Karadach the Watcher sent his lieutenant Manic Treeblower to the north to raise rebellion. Wow, who writes this stuff? The sorcerer Sorderon was sent to take over the throne of the good King Ba. In succeeding so, he stole the fabled scroll of Dorian, which gives the gift of immortality. Having learnt the secrets of the scroll, he returned to Karadach, slaying him, declaring himself the master of Elendor. The remaining living of Elendor await the coming of an unnamed one that shall set them free. That's where we come in. Okay, Enigma Force, this is a sequel to Shadowfire, and we're going to look at the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64 games. Following the events depicted in Shadowfire, General Zoff, the Republican dictator, is being captured, but he still had time to declare war on the Empire. Why didn't they just shoot him? Anyway, while 5 members of the Enigma team, Zark, Severina, Silek, Malt and yourself, escort Zoff to face the Emperor's wrath, the war flares across the galaxy. As you cross the Imperial border, Zoff concentrates his awesome Synop powers on Enigma's craft guidance system. Moments later, the ship is buckling and burning through the atmosphere of a planet. You awake, head throbbing, to find the Enigma craft wrecked and General Zoff missing. Oh, flippin' heck. Now, this game is very similar to its predecessor, Shadowfire. You take control of your 4 Enigma Force members, each with different abilities, and lead them through an underground complex filled with enemy soldiers and lots of puzzles. You will often need to combine the abilities of more than one crew member to solve a single puzzle. The user interface is completely icon driven. Only character movement and shooting is done directly with joystick. The game is in real time and you often need to switch between the characters because the enemy troops also move through the complex and attack. Okay, let's look at the Commodore 64 version of Enigma Force. Okay, this is Dante's Inferno. This was released only on the Commodore 64. Let's have a look. Dante's poem Inferno details a man's journey through hell in hope of reaching purgatory. This computer game interpretation takes the form of a maze-like arcade adventure. You can hold two objects at a time to use towards solving the puzzles. The objects you need are located in the initial forest, so lots of backtracking is required in this game. Cross the river Styx through the boatman to reach the 9 circles of hell. That sounds like a nice place, doesn't it? These represent people who will not go to heaven based on Christian theologies, from non-Christians to those who breach the 7 deadly sins such as sloth and gluttony. In other words, they've been a bit naughty. Contact with these must be avoided if you are to prove yourself pure enough to enter purgatory. Oh, strange story. Anyway, let's have a look at the game. Bounces is a sports fighting game released in 1986 for the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum. 2 players, one of which can be computer controlled, compete against each other in order to earn points. Each game consists of 2 halves of 90 seconds each, one from each side of the screen. The winner is simply the player with the most points at the end. There are 2 ways of earning points. The first is to catch the bouncing ball that bounces around the arena and throw it through the goal slots on the opponent's side of the screen. The further into the opponent's half of the screen the slot is, the more points it is worth, but the more difficult it is to get the ball into, particularly as each player is attached to their side of the screen by a wire. The second way to earn points is to knock the other player down, either with character's fist or with the ball. Being knocked down reduces stamina, as does straying too far into the other player's side of the screen, or colliding with the wall each player is attached to. And if either player runs out of stamina, they are unresponsive until they recover. Let's have a look at the game. Okay, this is Bounces on the Commodore 64. Ah, The Great Escape. What a great film. I remember it as a child. But it was also released as a game on the ZX Spectrum, the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64 and MS-DOS in 1986. You control an unarmed prisoner of war who has been detained in a POW camp somewhere in northern Germany in 1942. The camp itself is a small castle on a promontory surrounded on three sides by cliffs and the cold North Sea. And the only entry to the camp is by a narrow road through the gatehouse, and anyone passing through this must be carrying the correct papers. Everywhere else in the camp is surrounded by fences or walls, with guard dogs used to patrol the perimeter and guards in observation towers with searchlights posted to watch for any prisoners trying to escape. Just like the film. Also, beneath the camp there's also a maze of tunnels and drains, although these are dangerous to enter without some kind of light. The player's task is to escape from the camp. There are a number of different ways in which this can be achieved. The gaming environment is displayed in isometric 2.5D, with the player's character initially embedded at the beginning of the day in the camp. The prisoner has a daily routine along with all the other prisoners, which includes roll call, exercise and mealtimes and bedtime. The other prisoners will follow this routine, and if the player does not control the main character for a short period of time, then their character will join in this routine. I like that. There are soldiers guarding the camp, and they will apprehend the player if he is seen out of routine. Anyway, let's have a look at the game. Okay, let's have a look at the Commodore 64. Okay, The Great Escape for the Amstrad CPC. And finally, the MS-DOS version of The Great Escape. Infodroid was released in 1986 for the Amstrad CPC and the Commodore 64. We're looking at the Amstrad version here. So, Infodroid is set on a planet which exclusively deals with administration and focus on the delivery of information and packages. The player is in charge of a startup company and tries to become a big player within an established competition. All deliveries are executed by droids which travel on 5 streams with different speeds. The central being static and allowed to enter a variety of rooms, junctions, dispatch rooms in which new delivery jobs can be taken and old ones concluded. Information rooms where the game options can be changed and garages for repair duties. On the way, droids from other companies try to ram the player, hence the need for repairs, which need to be avoided by jumping between the streams. With money earned by delivering packages to the correct destination, new droids can be bought or the old ones upgraded. Example, better shields or boosts which allow to jump multiple streams at once. Let's have a look at the game. Okay, here we are, the Transformers, released in 1986 for the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64. Earth has been invaded by extraterrestrial shape-changing robots which have made our planet their battlefield. The struggle between the good Autobots and the evil Decepticons centres around energy, as the object is to collect 4 pieces of the Energon Cube and getting them back to the Autobot base. Now, the Decepticons will do their best to get in the way and to use the cubes to their own means. And basically, you have to control 5 Autobots that can either be in robot or vehicle form. You move around the platform searching for cubes. While in robot form, you can either walk or fly, but while in vehicle form, you drive around the platforms. Defensive pod can be used to switch between Autobots. And once all the cubes are collected, the game repeats at a higher difficulty. Each Autobot has shields that deplete when shot at or hit by an enemy Decepticon. And when all the Autobots have been destroyed, it's game over. So let's have a look at this Spectrum game. Okay, now we're on to the Commodore 64. Now, the Commodore 64 uses a scrolling playfield, while before the Spectrum used a flip screen technique. Anyway, let's have a look at the game. Denton came out in 1987 for the ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64. It's a shoot 'em up game. You are a professor who can fly around. The gameplay area is divided into different kinds of rooms. There are two parallel universes, the good and the bad, or modern and the ancient. And you get sent from one universe to another at times. Part of the game is to collect items from these mirror worlds that have been swapped and return them to their correct places, thus restoring the balance. In addition to this, you also need to shoot a lot of aliens before they shoot you, culminating with the fight against the big alien end monster. Let's have a look at the ZX Spectrum game and then we'll look at the Commodore 64. Eco is a wireframe 3D evolution life simulation game developed by Denton Designs for the Amiga and the Atari ST. It was released in 1987 and published by Ocean Software. So, Eco is an action strategy game of sorts which sets the player in charge initially of a small single-celled organism and challenges the player to guide its evolution. I like these kind of games. The initial tasks are to roam around finding food and then find a potential mate. Just like real life really, isn't it? Depending on the organism's status, different predators will be after it. A radar is displayed to indicate where these are at any given time. Once this is done, the player is taken to a screen displaying the species genes, and it has a chance to modify one of them, thus resulting in evolution. Eventually, the organism can evolve far enough to become plant, insect, fish, or even human. I don't see the sense of being a plant, do you? Anyway, this is the Amiga game, and then we'll go and look at the Atari. Okay, this is Eco on the Atari ST. Flashpoint was released on the cover tape of Your Sinclair November 1989 issue 47 magazine. Flashpoint is an action strategy game that is played on 2 grids of 45 squares, 5 lines of 9 squares each, facing each other and representing an area of the galaxy. The game is always played against an opponent, which can be either computer controlled or another player. Each side places their units on the grid in real time so as to get a score of 2000 first. Points are awarded when placing a unit or destroying an enemy unit. In addition to regular units, there are 5 types of weapons that can be used to destroy enemy units. Let's have a look. Okay, Madballs came out in the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. Okay, on the planet Orb live a gang of notorious Madballs who decide what is passed through Parliament. They have no leader, and this is where a ball simply known as Dustbrain comes in. Kind of what's happening now, to be honest with you. It is his quest to persuade the other Madballs on the planet to join him in his quest for power, and he does this by bumping them off the multiple directional scrolling platforms. Once a Madball has been persuaded, it appears in a tube at the bottom of the screen. And when the Madball ends up in the tube, then Dustbrain must find the down tube exit so that he can pursue other Madballs. While searching for other Madballs, Dustbrain encounters many obstacles that include trampolines, springboards, catapults, ramps, pyramids and oil slicks. And these obstacles can either help or hinder Dustbrain. Each platform has its own dustbin, and if Dustbin bounces over this, then he changes into a Madball already in the tube. Also, he'll make contact with 3 bureaucrats who will make his task harder, but they can also be pushed off the edge of the platforms, giving Dustbrain plenty of time to bounce around before the bureaucrats have the chance to resurrect themselves. Each Madball has its own speed and strength, and it can be difficult for a strong Madball to fall off a platform. Each of them also have their own energy source, which include cabbages, fish heads, bones and coke. And when 8 Madballs have been persuaded, then the tube is full. When the active Madballs fall off the platform, another one takes its place. And when the last Madball in the tube falls off the platform, his quest for power has failed. Alright, so let's have a look at the ZX Spectrum and then we'll look at the Commodore 64. Okay, this is the Commodore 64 version of Madballs. Such a crazy game. Mutants, released for the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. In the distant future, human beings have outposts all over the galaxies, but wars and aggression have not died out. Neither has opposition to potential exploitation or environmental damage. Your resistance movement has discovered that macrogenetic mutoids, mutants, are being bred purely to be used as weapons. Controlling Rainbow Warrior in this top-view shooter, you must fly to each of the 15 mutant breeding zones, collecting their self-destructive pods and taking all of these to the control room. You are armed with missiles, torpedoes and a shield, and can use one of these at a time. The control room is hazardous and any contact is destructive, but reaching its target will recharge your 3 lives. Thus, it can be worth doing this before you have completed all 15 zones. The gameplay element of having short levels with a short specific target to account for resembles Hunter's Moon. Well, there you go. So let's have a look at the ZX Spectrum. Okay, now we're on to the Commodore 64 version of Mutants. And finally, this is the Amstrad CPC version of Mutants. The sound in this game is pretty disappointing. There's very little in it. The Commodore 64 version is much better, a much better soundtrack. This game in the Amstrad has no soundtrack. Nevertheless, let's have a look. Usually it would be the farmers who get sent out of the house by their lady to go off and shoot some potential food. In this game, Denton Designs reverse the roles here though, and put you in control of a fox out for revenge. You'll be foraging both above and below ground, with rabbits and hens on offer to kill, and apples and milk can be collected. Not sure if I've seen a fox eat an apple before. Have you seen a fox eat an apple before? No, neither have I. All of this must be brought back to home before you complete each level. All manner of nasties are thrown at you, including eggs, that's from the hens, nuts, that's from the squirrels, and rocks, and that's from the badgers. Again, I'm not really sure I've seen a badger throw a rock. And I'm not too sure how hens throw eggs. But those squirrels, yes, they probably would throw nuts at you. So anyway, let's look at the ZX Spectrum game. Okay, this is the Commodore 64 version of Fox Fights Back. Always a much better game, always much better sound than the Commodore 64. Troll was released in the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum in 1988. You are Humgruffin, a troll who is being transported to the netherworld of Narc, a land full of goblins and crystals and ceilings to walk on. The only chance to escape is to reverse a spell that put him there. In each chamber is a crystal which needs to be collected and put in an amulet. You need to avoid the goblins or being trapped by walls built by them. If you touch a goblin, then you start to turn to stone and transported elsewhere in Narc. To help you on your quest, you can make holes appear in the ground for you to fall through into another part of Narc or make a goblin disappear. You can use other objects as well, which include pyramids to help you jump to the ceiling, toadstools, which summons a dwarf to make holes in the floor, and die to make a random hole. Troll is a 3D isometric game which shows both the floor and the ceiling that can be walked on. The game is viewed in an elevated angle, and the joystick or keyboard can be used, and as well as the main playing area you can also see the icons you need to help you on your quest. Interesting game. Eye of Horus is a game in which the player is Horus, search within a labyrinth for the pieces of his father's Osiris. Hieroglyphs in this labyrinth come to life to attack Horus, and he can use papyrus darts to fight them, or turn into a hawk and fly over enemies. Horus can also find amulets that can either be used to enhance the powers of his weapons, or to grant him other abilities as needed. Okay, Star Race, which was released on the Commodore 64. Some of you may remember seeing this game on the Zap 64 magazine. But it wasn't especially designed for the magazine. It was originally programmed for Ocean, but Ocean didn't like the game as they felt it wouldn't sell and decided not to release it. And so Denton Designs were stuck with the complete game. The real problem really was that the vector graphics were a bit slow. After Denton Designs looked for another publisher without success, they sold the game to Zap 64 for them to spread on their cover tape at a small cost to basically cover their losses. The game itself features some slowish vector graphics and involves you in a race within a series of tunnels against other crafts, all looking a bit Star Fox style. It's a nice addictive game, I suppose, just held back by the slowness. Where time stood still, it was released on the ZX Spectrum, the Atari ST and the MS-DOS. We'll look at the ZX Spectrum and the Atari ST versions here. So, a plane has crashed in a remote and unknown plateau of the Himalayas. To their horror, the survivors soon discover that it is populated by dangerous prehistoric creatures and tribes. Therefore, the player must guide the party of 4 survivors, the pirate, Jarrett and his 3 passengers, to safety, avoiding the dinosaurs, cannibals and natural dangers, while also ensuring they are sufficiently rested and fed during the long and difficult journey. Quondam was released on the cover tape of Crash issue number 66 in July 1989. In Quondam, you're in control of a fighter plane far in the future, flying through the tunnels of a Quondam matrix viewed from overhead. Your objective is to fly to all 15 hangars, collect the right jigsaw pieces and slot them all together to create the Quondam picture. The other 28 hangars house weapon supplies, so entering them you'll probably require a homing missile or a shield for your plane. Vicious aliens in many shapes and forms also fly through the Quondam matrix, firing at you with their weaponry. However, happily, you can also do the same and shoot at them and bring them to the ground. World Class Rugby was released alongside the 1991 Rugby World Cup, which was won by New Zealand in the final against England. Recreating this full 16-team event is an option, as are individual friendly matches and an 8-team league. Options are highly customizable. There are 10 skill levels, variable match lengths, the option to play without offsides, and variable pitch conditions. Okay, that's good, isn't it? Replays can also be enabled for each try and then saved to the disc. Nice. The accurate rules of rugby are recreated, including scrums, lineouts, penalties and drop goals. The game was released on the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, the Atari ST, the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum and MS-DOS. We're obviously looking at the Spectrum, but I'm going to show you the Commodore, the Atari ST and the Amstrad CPC next. Records is an isometric sci-fi action game with strategy elements released for the MS-DOS, Amiga and Atari ST. Robotic droids roll quietly through the corridors of Space Station Beacon 04523N. Automated computers calculate routes for interstellar traffic. 3 human officers sleep in cryogenic tanks, awakened only for routine system checks or in case of an emergency. With a hum, the cryogenic control springs online as Beacon's long-range sensors detect incoming life forms. Controlling one of the onboard officers, the player has to defend the station against swarms of plasmodium spores, also known as the Wreckers, showering down on Beacon and seeping into its 4 sections. While the spores approach, they can be sucked out of space with a gigantic Hoover-like space hose. Once they settle onto the station's hull, jump into the spacesuit and spray infected areas with a cleansing agent. Undetected spores will sweep into the station's corridors where the protagonist must hunt them down with a plasma shots and avoid being shot in return. In addition, up to 10 droids are under the player's indirect control. Ranging from cleaners to fighters to engineers, these automatons will act independently but can be sent to key locations within the station, i.e. infected areas. As the officer gains experience through battles, he will be promoted to higher ranks, enabling him to construct more efficient fighter robots in the station's droid factory. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Since plasmodiums running rampant in the station will cause system malfunctions, the main goal in such cases is to clear infections quickly and make sure that Beacon continues to function properly. To make things worse, a self-destruct mechanism will detonate the station in 60 minutes unless all signs of spore activity cease. It's a bit like Aliens, that film, isn't it? When Ripley had to get rid of the alien before the station blew up, isn't it? It's a bit like that. Back to this again. So, World Class Rugby was again released in 1992, but this time with the 5 Nations edition. And this was released on the Amiga, the Atari ST, and the MS-DOS. Again, it's just a top-down view rugby game in which you can play both World Cup and the 5 Nations tournaments. Just the same as the last game, really. Similar to some versions on consoles, the Amiga adaptation of Batman Returns is a side-scrolling beat-em-up with platform elements. To defeat the Penguin, Batman must make his way through a number of levels, usually beating up henchmen from the Red Triangle Cross Gang with punches and kicks. There are also some special weapons, which must be collected and have limited ammunition. These include batarangs, throwing discs, or a bat rope. Some special enemies can only be defeated by applying the correct weapon. And some levels give more weight to platforming than fighting, such as a rooftop chase with Catwoman, or navigating the sewers while searching for the Penguin's lair. Okay, we're on to 1994's Elite Soccer, which was released on the Game Boy. So, we play Elite Soccer and revel in the greatest soccer tournament on earth. Experience the ultimate soccer game on your Game Boy. Take your favourite international team on a journey through the most prestigious soccer tournament in the world, the World Cup. World Cup tournament incorporates 24 international teams. Every detail and aspect of the game can be user-defined. The game also includes the World League and knockout tournaments. I quite like the team edit options, which allow you to choose from your own team's players. Let's have a look at the game. And finally, it's Wembley Rugby League, which was released on the Amiga and the MS-DOS in 1994. Having previously recreated the more internationally famed rugby union with World Class Rugby, Denton switched their attention to Rugby League using the same game engine. The main differences in the league game is that a team has to give up possession after being tackled 6 times. The gameplay is viewed from either a kick-off style overhead view or a forced perspective 3D one with a scanner on screen to show where your teammates are. Passing is pulled off by pressing fire and directing the pass, whereas holding down the fire will kick the ball up ahead. Tackle involves aiming at the player and diving if necessary, and set pieces involve aiming the direction and angle by pressing fire at the right times to stop a crossover. So let's have a look at the Amiga and then we'll have a look at the MS-DOS.
Kickoff. Conversion. Kickoff. Penalty.
Gosh, well there you go. So many games from Denton Designs. Most of them I quite liked, some not so much. I still have to say, I do like that Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Anyway, we're getting close to the end of the video, so what actually happened to the people of Denton Designs? Well, as a start, when Denton Designs was contracted to develop Shadowfire, Ian Weatherburn became disillusioned with the fact that the company was no longer operating as it had when they had been part of Imagine, and on issuing an ultimatum was sacked by the rest of the directors. Ouch. A little bit harsh, but not all doom and gloom, because Ian subsequently joined Ocean. And then, in March 1986, the company split, with founders Steve Cain, Karen Davies, Graham Everett and John Gibson leaving. Of the original founders, only Ali Noble remained. And then, in December 1995, Denton Designs was acquired by Rage Software. Sadly, in July 2023, John Gibson had died. John contributed to the creation of classics like Muller Mall, Zoom and Stongers, as well as the real Bandersnatch game before Imagine went bankrupt. And when John left Denton, he actually set up his own company called John Gibson Software Design from 1986 to 1990 as a freelance programmer. Then he was recruited to the Liverpool developer Psygnosis, where he worked as a senior programmer for 8 years on games like Microcosm and Sentient. If my history serves me right, Psygnosis were also a company that came out from the demise of Imagine Software. And following this, Gibson moved to Warhog Games and then to Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, where he became an integral part of the Evolution Studios team. And from 2007, he was the principal programmer for the MotorStorm series, including MotorStorm, MotorStorm Pacific Rift, MotorStorm Apocalypse, MotorStorm RC and Drive Club. Wow, there you go. So folks, there you go, that was my video on Denton Designs and all the games that they developed as well. I hope you liked my video. Now please remember to press that like button. Also please leave a message. I do value your thoughts and comments, but please remember that these videos are just for fun. And finally, it would be brilliant and very much appreciated if you subscribe to my channel. That would just be brilliant. That would be awesome, so do that. So until the next time, have a great day. See you all soon. Bye bye.